One missing name has flipped Hollywood upside down, because when Taylor Swift, the biggest pop star alive, finalized the guest list for her wedding, the invitations told a story louder than any headline. Everyone who mattered got a seat at the table. Billionaires, icons, even royalty. But not Meghan Markle. Instead, the spotlight went straight to her biggest rival, Princess Kate, and that single choice sent shockwaves through Hollywood's power game. But this wasn't just a snub, it was a cultural verdict, and what it revealed about Meghan's fading influence will leave you stunned. One missing name has flipped Hollywood upside down, because when Taylor Swift, the biggest pop star alive, finalized the guest list for her wedding, the invitations told a story louder than any headline. Everyone who mattered got a seat at the table. Billionaires, icons, even royalty, but not Meghan Markle. Instead, the spotlight went straight to her biggest rival, Princess Kate, and that single choice sent shockwaves through Hollywood's power game. But this wasn't just a snub, it was a cultural verdict, and what it revealed about Meghan's fading influence will leave you stunned. Because here's the thing, this wasn't just a party. Taylor's wedding is the kind of event that rewrites the Hollywood hierarchy overnight. A guest list like this isn't random, it's curated, deliberate, and every name on it is a signal. You had Jeff Bezos locked in, Kim Kardashian confirmed, of course. The biggest movers and shakers across music, business, and culture all lined up for the photos that will dominate the internet for months. And sitting among them, to everyone's surprise, was Princess Kate. That single name in gold lettering said more than a press release ever could. This wasn't the palace deciding protocol. This wasn't the British crown forcing tradition. This was Taylor Swift, the queen of pop, making a personal choice about who belonged at her table. And Kate was in. Meghan wasn't. And if you think this was just about friendship, you'd be wrong. Because the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't a social oversight, it was a mess. And if you think this was just about friendship, you'd be wrong. Because the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't a social oversight, it was a message. For Meghan, that message couldn't have come at a worse time. Ever since walking away from the royal family, she's been grinding to carve out her own empire in Hollywood. Netflix series, a Spotify deal, glossy magazine spreads on paper. It looked like she was building a brand too big to ignore. The plan was simple: go from duchess to global powerhouse. Untouchable, unstoppable. But reality hasn't matched the vision. Her podcast burned bright for a moment, then fizzled. Her Netflix projects didn't create the splash her team promised. Each headline about her brand seemed to come with a catch: too much drama, not enough impact. And in Hollywood, momentum is everything. That's why Taylor's wedding invite list cuts so deep. Meghan needed this season to be her reset, her climb back into the upper tier. Instead, she found herself erased at the exact moment she needed visibility most. One glittering event could have reminded the world she belonged at the table. Instead, her seat went to someone else. And not just anyone, but the woman she's been compared to for years. And just when Meghan thought she was ready to take back control of the spotlight, something even bigger came crashing down. And just when Meghan thought she was ready to take back control of the spotlight, something even bigger came crashing down. Because the very moment her team began gearing up for her next big media push, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's engagement dropped like an earthquake on the internet. Overnight, every headline, every trending topic, every whisper of attention shifted away. Whatever Meghan had planned was drowned out by the roar of Taylor and Travis. But the engagement wasn't the only headline. The real storm came with the leaks. Guest list details started slipping through the cracks. Billionaires here, superstars there. And then the shocker: Princess Kate's name stamped in gold. Not a rumor, not a maybe, a confirmed guest. That's when the comparisons exploded. Meghan's absence wasn't just noticed, it was dissected. Twitter threads, reaction videos, royal watchers, Hollywood insiders. Everyone was asking the same question: why Kate, not Meghan? And the answers cut deep. Because in one move, Taylor didn't just announce her wedding, she announced her alignment. She drew a line in the sand, and suddenly, Meghan wasn't just left out of an event, she was left out of the narrative itself. And that's when the real damage began. Because the snub wasn't about an invitation, it was about perception. And that's when the real damage began. Because the snub wasn't about an invitation, it was about perception. For years, Kate and Meghan have been locked in an unspoken battle of image. Kate, the polished future queen, who rarely strays from calm elegance. Meghan, the disruptor, breaking royal rules and chasing her own spotlight in Hollywood. Two women, constantly compared, constantly contrasted. So when Taylor made her choice, it wasn't just about who she preferred to sip champagne with. It was a statement. Kate represented grace without noise, influence without controversy. Meghan, on the other hand, carried headlines that never seemed to stop spiraling. Legal drama, feuds, strained business deals, unpredictable PR storms. For Taylor, whose brand runs on precision and polish, the decision was easy because in Hollywood, association is currency. Inviting Kate meant stability, class, and cultural approval. Inviting Meghan meant risking the circus, and at a wedding destined to dominate the internet, there was no room for chaos. To Meghan's critics, it was proof of what they've been saying all along. Her brand has become more exhausting than exciting. To her supporters, it was another example of the bias she's battled from the start. But either way, the message landed loud and clear. Kate was in, Meghan was out. And if you think Meghan took that quietly, think again. And if you think Meghan took that quietly, think again. Insiders say she was furious the moment the guest list began circulating. Not just at Taylor, but at the symbolism of it all. To see Kate handed the golden ticket while her own name was missing was a sting that cut deep. So her team did what they always do: damage control. Almost immediately, whispers started spreading. Meghan had prior commitments. She was focusing on creative projects. Maybe she didn't even want to be there, but the internet wasn't buying it because, let's be honest, nobody skips Taylor Swift's wedding to edit a podcast episode, especially not when your rival is front and center, glass of champagne in hand, basking in the very spotlight you've been chasing. That silence from Taylor's side only made it worse. With no statement, no explanation, the headlines filled in the blanks: viral posts, think pieces, endless speculation. It all circled back to one undeniable fact: Meghan wasn't on the list, and no spin could change that. But what stung even more, some insiders say Meghan had seen this coming. She reportedly reached out through mutual contacts weeks in advance, hoping for an opening, maybe an invite to a pre-wedding dinner, maybe a quiet gesture of goodwill. What came back? Nothing. Just silence. And when Kate's invitation went public, that silence transformed into humiliation. And Meghan wasn't the only one caught in the fallout, because as the storm swirled around her, another name started coming up, a name that once carried serious weight but now feels almost invisible. And that's the part Meghan can't afford to ignore. Because if Hollywood is done with Harry, and Kate is rising higher than ever, Meghan has only one option left: to plot her next move with surgical precision. Insiders say she's already working behind the scenes on a major pivot. Maybe it's a glossy new project designed to reset her image. Maybe it's a tell-all interview where she finally takes the gloves off. Or maybe it's something scripted, something that allows her to control the narrative down to the last detail. Whatever it is, it's being calculated with the kind of intensity that comes from knowing the stakes couldn't be higher. But here's the problem: no option is risk-free anymore. If she goes loud, critics will call her bitter. If she goes quiet, they'll say she's been defeated. And sympathy, the card she once played so effectively, doesn't hit the same way it used to. Audiences have grown skeptical. What once felt like authenticity now risks being read as strategy. That's the trap Meghan finds herself in. Every move she makes can be spun against her. And while she's busy planning her comeback, her rival doesn't have to lift a finger. Because Kate doesn't need spin. She doesn't need strategy. She doesn't even need to speak. Her presence alone is enough to tip the scales. And that's where the real power shift comes into focus. Because while Meghan scrambles for a way back into the spotlight, Kate doesn't need to chase it at all. She just shows up. No press releases, no Instagram campaigns, no spin teams pushing headlines. At Taylor's wedding, all she has to do is step out in a soft-colored gown, smile for the cameras, and let the photos write the story for her. That's the kind of influence Meghan has always craved. The kind where silence speaks louder than 1,000 interviews. And in this case, silence delivered the final blow. Taylor's choice didn't just decide a guest list, it decided perception. It crowned Kate as the woman who fits the fantasy and left Meghan standing outside, wondering how the game slipped away. Because this wasn't just a wedding, it was a cultural milestone. Every frame, every article, every viral reaction will carry the same unspoken reminder: Kate was there, Meghan wasn't. And in Hollywood, absence is louder than present. So as the flashbulbs pop and the photos flood the internet, Meghan's invisibility may become her greatest headline yet. Not because she made a mistake, not because she said the wrong thing, but because when it mattered most, she wasn't even in the room. And in this business, sometimes missing the moment is the biggest story of all.